Good morning. Welcome to Brunch with Brian, your real estate daily live stream. And today we're going to talk about subject to deals. That's one of the things over our 17 years of teaching real estate and real estate investing, and especially creative financing. One of the questions we get the most is, what is a subject to deal? How do I make money on a subject to deal? And can you teach me how to do it? And subject twos are very profitable deals if you understand how to do them. So we're going to get to that in just a second. I love talking about real estate and teaching you guys exactly what you need to know to make a lot of money in especially the creative financing world. And I'll tell you what, subject twos, we call them the low-hanging fruit. We call them the easy deals to get. And that is because generally, when you're negotiating, this is a form of seller financing. What is subject to? Well, let me not get ahead of myself. Just welcome you guys to Brunch with Brian. I'm here every day, every weekday at the same time, so always make sure you're here. Today is Epiphany, and I was married in Epiphany Church, so I had to say that. It's actually the 12th day of Christmas, believe it or not, and sometimes they call it the Three Kings Day. So I was married in Epiphany Church 35 years ago. Wow. Okay, so I have to call out that. It's actually, sometimes I like to say if it's a national day, today's National Bean Day for some reason. So, and it's a couple other things, but let's get to the subject twos. Oh, and our affirmations today. I'm going to learn all the deals to make the most money. Okay. I'm going to learn all the deals to make the most money. Okay, let's do that one again. I'm going to learn all the deals to make the most money. Okay, now how many deals are there? There's 6. There's 6 deals that you're going to be working with. And just to give you like an overview, pretty houses, creative financing deals, that's just one way to do it. Now, underneath that umbrella of creative financing, there's several different strategies that you're going to use. Beyond just the number one type of deal, there's retail, rehab retail, there's wholesaling, there's pre-foreclosures, there's optioning deals, and there's a range of different kinds of deals. But let's focus on subject twos. Subject two is a type of a creative financing deal, and it's very similar to assuming a mortgage. Now, it used to be that all the veterans and all the FHA mortgages, before the Garn-St. Germain's Federal Depository Act of 1982 happened, they pretty much, you could assume any mortgage, and that's how they were written, and people didn't even have to get qualified. So you could assume a mortgage with no qualification. So they changed that, and now it's not where you can just say, hey, I'll assume your mortgage, whatever terms you had. That's not something that happens in the practical world of real estate, except when you get into the world of creative financing, because you're not tied down by every little rule. Now, the rule that you think you might be tied down by is the due on sale clause, and that's the one objection that people will bring up sometimes. But let me get into the subject to deal. First of all, write down the definition of a subject to deal. Is a seller financing deal where you take over the payments on the existing financing, taking over the payments on the existing mortgage. So there's a mortgage in place. Now, what's the key here is that the mortgage has to be, close to how much they owe on the house if you're going to take it over that way. If you do a straight seller financing, if they owe 60% of how much the house is worth, if it's a $200,000 house and they owe 60%, they owe $120,000. And the key questions in subject twos are, will you sell us the house for what you owe on it? And will you leave the mortgage in your name? So now that's not, you don't come out and ask it quite that way, but that's basically the only 2 questions in a subject to deal. And when you have those 2 questions answered in the positive, you've got a subject to deal. So that's awesome. The reason they call it the low-hanging fruit, the reason that's why we term it that, is because normally on a seller financing deal, you have to work out 4 things. You have to work out the purchase price, the monthly payment, the length of the term, how long are they going to give you before they want a balloon payment in there, and what's the down payment going to be. Now, on a subject to deal, when you ask, will you sell us the house for what you owe on it, and they say yes, Obviously you've already asked them what they owe on the mortgage. At this point, you've already determined that. Now that's the key, because they have to owe upwards of 85 to 90% of how much the house is worth, or when you ask that question, you're going to look ridiculous. If they owe $100,000 on a $200,000 house and it's nice, it's in beautiful condition, and you say, will you sell me the house for what you owe on it? They're going to hang up on you. They're going to, or at least they're going to deem you worthy of less credibility. So they're not going to trust you as much. So you got to be, faithful to the facts here. So ask them. So if you don't know what the mortgage amount is, you can't say, will you sell us the house for what you own it? That's why you need to get the mortgage information. Now that opens up another can of worms, because most sellers will say, well, why do you need to know my mortgage information? That's why we like to kind of explain what we do, that we do seller financing deals. Now, here's another big tip. Write this down. Don't say the word subject to. So even though we call a deal subject to, essentially, and you're just saying, will you sell me the house for what you want it? And will you keep the mortgage in your name? And if they say yes and yes, then whatever the payments are, you just start making those payments. And the way it works mechanically is you're making these payments directly to the mortgage company. You are not making these payments to the seller. Excuse me. You're not making these payments to the seller because, as much as you want to trust people, they possibly could be pocketing that money and not sending it to the mortgage company. That would be called equity skimming. So you don't want to do that. That's illegal. So when you make your payment directly to the mortgage company, the seller walks away. In fact, that's the big appeal to the seller. Walk away today. That's one of the things you might say in your marketing. Walk away today. No hassles. And this is a very quick deal, this subject to deal, because you don't have to wait around to get an inspection and an appraisal and a new financing lined up. The financing is already in place. So you're just using, and one of my students never could understand subject tos until I said existing financing. That phrase made it real. Okay, so there's existing financing on this house and you're just taking it over. So it's that simple, and it's like assuming, sometimes we say it's like assuming the mortgage, like the old veterans and FHA loans, without having to do all that assumption paperwork. So we just start making the payments directly to the mortgage company, and the seller is free of the house, free and clear, and they can walk away today. Now remember, the mortgage is still in their name, so it's possible that they can't go immediately out and get a new mortgage, and that's a whole nother area that I'll talk about another time, of how to make sure that they can qualify for another mortgage. Now, in the world of subject to, you can structure it a little bit differently. It's really simple and easy to do a subject to deal, and it's really easy to write up. You just write in how much they owe on the mortgage, and you write in the purchase price, and they're the same. And so you're basically just taking over the mortgage with the terms that are on the mortgage. So it's pretty easy to write up. But you may want to do it as what we call a wrap, and that's going to be another session. A wrap is owner financing with an underlying mortgage. And so you basically write the wrap for exactly the subject to terms. But that gives the seller a debt instrument. I don't want to complicate it too much here. A debt instrument that they could use to foreclose on you if you stop paying them. If it's just a straight subject to and you stop paying on the mortgage, they have to wait around while their credit is at risk until the mortgage company decides to foreclose, which sometimes can take a long time. That could be years of missed payments. So that's why subject to protects the seller less. And let me give you another caveat on this. If there is an attorney involved, if you know the seller has an attorney and an attorney is going to be reviewing all this paperwork, I probably wouldn't even write it up as a subject to. I just immediately pitch it as a wrap and say, this is how we're going to write it up. And you'd write up, it's a little more complicated, but you'd write it up as a wrap then. So if you guys have any questions on deals, specific deals, if you need our help on specific deals, we're open to talking to you about stuff. So call our office at 888-RICH-NOW. If you're working on a deal, or if you have a potential creative financing deal that you're never going to be able to figure out how to close because you don't know how to do it yet, call us and talk to us about that specific deal. We can help you on deals. And if you've never done a subject to deal, there's some ins and outs that you're going to need to be able to understand. So we love training you guys, and always, with any question, anytime, just call our office, 888-RICH-NOW, and we'll help you with whatever training or whatever you need to make the money that you deserve in this business. And so now you understand a lot more about a subject to deal. But again, basically you're just taking over an existing mortgage like an assumption and starting to make the payments. That due on sale clause, which is the one objection that you may get. If I leave the mortgage in my name, but I move out and you move in and I transfer the ownership of the property, that, sometimes may make some people who are very conservative hesitant, but I want you to explain to them that the mortgage company is not in the business to take people's houses. They just want payments. And the last thing they want is to foreclose on a house that's making good payments. So number one, nobody notifies the mortgage company when a deed is transferred. It's not like somebody down at the county recorder is calling all the mortgage holders and lien holders on the property saying that it's being transferred. So the deed can transfer subject to the existing mortgage, the existing financing. That's where the word subject to comes in there. So, but, and if the mortgage company, basically the only way the mortgage company ever can find out is if the seller themselves calls and tells them. And so that is one of the things that I want you guys to do, is to make sure that you get this lender letter signed in the deal meeting. I know I'm getting into the weeds a little bit here, but I want you to get this letter signed so that they don't call the mortgage company and start saying, hey, I just sold my house. So that's the key, and you don't want to have any issues with that due on sale clause. If it ever got to that point where it was triggered, there's a lot of different strategies that you can do, and we can help you with that as well. So guys, I just wanted to talk to you about subject to deals today. I know so many people have so many questions about that. So hopefully that was really helpful to you. Remember, they have to owe about 85 or 90% on the mortgage for this to work, or 95%, something close to how much the house is worth. Otherwise, it's just going to be a plain old seller financing deal, not a subject to deal. Okay, so that was awesome training for you guys this morning. And we'll be back on Brunch with Brian every weekday at the same time. So visit us tomorrow and the next day and every weekday at the same time. Until we see you next time, keep expecting success, getting awesome training here with Brunch with Brian and the Wolf Couple, and keep taking action.